Last week we went 3-3 on the main card. If you ask me, it probably should have been 5-1. There were a pair of questionable decisions by the judges in the two women's fights. Andrea Lee and Roxanne Modafferi. All likelihood came down to the third round, and I personally think Lee took it, but the judges disagreed, so we lost one there. And then also in the main event, Angela Hill and Michelle Waterson. Also likely came down to the fifth round. I think Hill took the first two pretty clearly, while Waterson took 3 and 4 pretty clearly. And once again, if you ask me, came down to the fifth round, and I think Hill took it with her work and output. But judges saw it a different way. And I mean, hey, what can I say? Sal D'Amato, universally known as one of the weirdest judges, always seems to have a unique take on fights in his eyes. He actually gave Waterson the second round, which blows my mind considering she didn't really do much. But regardless, 3-3 last week. Probably should have went 5-1, but it is what it is. And this is probably the first. This is probably the best card we've seen in quite some time. It's leading up to UFC 254, maybe 253. I don't know, but next weekend where it's Adesanya and Paulo Costa, also Jan Blachowicz and Dom Reyes are on that card as well. So this is probably the best card we've seen in quite some time, and we'll get straight into it. It's a six fight main card, so I'll preview all 6 of those for you guys, as well as giving you guys a prelim pick that I think has some pretty good value. So we'll start with Kevin Holland versus Darren Stewart. Holland's 18-5 and is a pretty big favorite at -265. Stewart's 12-5 in his career, and he is coming back at a +225 underdog. And excuse me, but you can see I have it up on screen. The fight to not go to a decision is at +115, and I think that's the best bet for the fight. If you are looking for a winner, I do think Holland wins it. He's a pretty big favorite, and I think for a decent reason. But just to get some extra value on the pick, I think this fight to be finished inside the distance at +115 is pretty good. Both these guys do look to finish fights. Holland has finished 15 of his 18 wins, and also 2 of his 5 losses were inside the distance as well. And even more, his last 3 fights were all finishes. So he's been on a streak of seeing his fights called early. And on the other side, Darren Stewart, 8 of his 12 wins are by finish, and 2 of his 5 losses are also inside the distance as well. So it's 2 guys whose fights tend to be finished early. And the only thing I'm really concerned about here is both these guys have power, and I think you could see them be scared of each other's power and take the fight a little slow, which obviously hurts the chances of the fight being finished early. But I think that's less so for Kevin Holland than it is Darren Stewart. He's shown a couple times that he likes to start a little slow, but either way, I think these 2 guys are pretty similar in style. I would say that Holland is probably a better version of Stewart. Obviously, they're not identical fighters, but relatively the same. But yeah, I mean, both these guys' track records show that they like to finish fights, and when they lose, they also get finished at a decent clip. So my pick for this one, if you're looking for a winner, like I said, it is Holland, but the fight to be stopped inside the distance at +115, I think has some good value. And we'll go into the second fight on the card. It is Mackenzie Dern versus Randa Markos. And I mean, right away, if you're looking at it, Mackenzie Dern's 8-1, Markos is 10-9-1. So, sorry, but yeah, that line might not make too much sense if when you look at the record, you see a 500 fighter versus Mackenzie Dern, who's 8-1, obviously pretty good. And so you might think those lines do not make sense, Dern being only a -165 favorite, and I would agree if you feel that way. Dern's a great jiu-jitsu artist. She has 5 submission wins. Her only loss is to Amanda Ribas, and while she has beaten Hannah Cifers, Ashley Yoder, Montana De La Rosa, among some others. So I do think Dern's a good fighter. One thing I should say before I even get into all this, neither of these 2 girls can strike. They have very bad striking. I would say Markos is kind of known, she's kind of a meme in the UFC community. She kind of just stands there like this and just walks forward. It's a really awkward fighting style, and it shows why she has some pretty bad striking. And Dern, Same thing there. I mean, she knows she has jiu-jitsu. She wants to get the fight to the ground, look to work for a submission. And she'll do anything she can to take it there because her striking's pretty bad as well. But Markos started her career off 3-0, but she has not won 2 fights in a row since then. She went loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, all the way up to where she is now. She is coming off a loss, so the trend would say she wins this fight, but I just personally don't see it. Markos has beaten Ashley Yoder as well, and also was coming off to a loss to Amanda Ribas in her last fight, which also is Dern's only loss. But she does have some wins over Angela Hill, Carla Esparza, while losing to Claudia Gedhela, Nina Ansaroff, and Alexa Grasso. Personally, I just don't think Markos is a good fighter. She has good wrestling, but on the other side, Dern has elite wrestling. And like I said, both their stand-ups are pretty bad. I do think Dern gets this fight to the ground and maybe can work to a finish, but either way, I do think that she will either point fight her way to a win or get the finish, like I said. And I just think that minus 165 is a great line in this fight. I think it gives you very good value on Dern, who is the better fighter. Not the more experienced, but what we've seen, she is better. So that's my pick here, minus 165. I think that's good value. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this line opened at around minus 300 for Dern. You can fact check me on that one, but a lot of money coming in late on Randa Markos, which I just personally don't understand, but that's just me. Next fight is Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spann. Should be a relatively exciting one. Johnny Walker, people that know him, the rise and fall of his UFC career has been very fast on both ends. He won on the Contender Series Brazil, came into the UFC, got 3 straight knockouts in the first round. All were performance of the nights. And then you start hearing the rumblings of this is the guy that's going to come in and take down John Jones. He's the one that's going to stop the run. And when he gets thrown into the dogs against a better opponent in Corey Anderson, he gets knocked out in the first round. And then in a chance of a bounce-back fight, he gets Nikita Krylov and gets out-wrestled for pretty much 15 minutes straight, gets dominated. So he's coming off back-to-back losses after getting the push of saying he's the future of the light heavyweight division. So he's looking to bounce back after 2 losses there. Ryan Spann on the other side, who is a slight underdog here at plus 105. I think he might have actually moved up to around plus 110, plus 115. You can shop around for some prices there. But he actually lost in the Contender Series and didn't get a contract, obviously, but he rattled off a couple wins and then got asked back to the Contender Series where he got a win. And now he is on a 4-fight win streak in the UFC. Has some decent wins. Beat Lil Nog, Devin Clark, Smiling Sam Alvey. Not elite competition, but wins good enough where you can have some confidence in him. Yeah, I mean, Walker, in terms of fight style, he is a pure knockout artist, only looks for knockouts. 14 of the 17 wins are by knockout, and more of them than not do come in the first round. And Ryan Spann on the other side is more of a submission guy, even though he does like to throw hands a little bit. 11 of his 18 wins are by submission, but both these guys have cardio issues, which is a big thing in this fight because both guys are going to expend a lot of energy early looking for a finish. And Johnny Walker has shown that he gasses out pretty quickly and can get wrestled like he did against Krylov. And Ryan Spann's kind of the same. He has shown that he doesn't have the best gas tank in the world. So he could gas out as well, too. So if this fight doesn't end early, could definitely be a boring fight, considering both these guys might not be able to breathe. But I do like Ryan Spann here as a slight underdog at plus 105, plus 110, whatever he is. I like the wrestling abilities for Spann. It's something that he can fall back on, even if he doesn't want to go to it right away. I do think he should do it, but his track record shows he will try to stand and throw a little bit to start. And I mean, the thing with Ryan Spann is in the first round of his fights, he looks like he is a potential title contender. He looks so good in the first rounds and then looks so bad afterwards. But I think the last fight against Krylov for Johnny Walker showed the recipe to beat him. If you're not going to get a flash knockout like Corey Anderson did, you can take Johnny Walker down and you can wrestle him. He doesn't really have any skills off his back. So I think that Ryan Spann, if he's a smart fighter, which I'm hoping he is, will look and shoot some takedowns and get Johnny Walker on his back, and can either work for a submission, as we said, he has 11 of those, but at the very least can just take some rounds and win the fight. So yeah, I mean, I kind of think that's how it's going to play out. He might look for the knockout early, but will ultimately resort to the takedown. So I think plus 105 is a good value. Johnny Walker's fall off, like I said, I think it continues. So I only see Walker winning by knockout, while I can see Spann kind of point fighting or getting the submission. So I just think there's more paths to a victory for Ryan Spann. And as an underdog, I'll take that at plus 105. But don't get me wrong, it's Johnny Walker. Could throw some crazy flying knees, a big overhand, and get a knockout early. So not my most confident pick, but in a fight that's like a matchup like this, I do like to take an underdog here, especially when he has some advantages. And now into probably the fight that I'm looking forward to the most. It's Khamzat Chimaev. I've heard his name pronounced 1,000 different ways, so forgive me if that's not the one that you've heard. Going up against Gerald Meerscheart, who is probably, let's just say it, is the biggest competition that Chimaev's faced in his career. So we should just probably start off by saying that there are so many fighters that come into the UFC that you hear, this is the guy that's going to be the champ, this guy could be the greatest of all time. We saw it with Johnny Walker, who we just talked about. We saw it with Edmund Shabazian, who just lost to Derek Brunson. Shane Burgos had some hype behind him. He lost to Josh Emmett. And we just saw it with Sean O'Malley a couple weeks ago, losing to Chito Vera. So the track record shows that when these guys with so much hype get a big step up in competition, which this is, just want to make that clear, that they lose. But the thing with Chimaev is I think he's different. I think he's special. I didn't really buy into any of those guys. I kind of bought into O'Malley a little bit. I still think he's there. Obviously, he got hurt in the fight. But if I was lined up with all those names and you had to tell, and then you asked me to pick which one of these guys is going to be the champ, I would pick Chimaev here. I really just do think that he's different. He's getting a lot of fame coming off 2 wins that he just had in Fight Island, I believe it was in Abu Dhabi. 2 wins in 10 days, 2 different weight classes, and he came in and he dominated the fights. And I mean absolutely dominated the fights. Another thing, the push here, something you never see in the UFC is Dana White double booking guys. And he's already said that if Chimaev gets the win here, Damian Maia is the next opponent. So obviously looking to push him. And I think it's good. I think it's good to push him. I think it's good for the sport. But regardless, that's just something that you don't see out of the UFC. You don't see them double booking people. But like I was saying, he dominated those 2 fights that he had in that 10-day span. First, he fought John Phillips and outlanded Phillips 124-2. He got hit twice while throwing and landing 124 punches, which is just absolutely absurd. Comes back 10 days later, fights Rice McKee at a different weight class, and outlands him 40-0. Didn't get hit once, got the takedown early, and just ground and pounded his way to a win. I mean, it's absolutely insane that his strike ratio in his last 2 fights is 164-2. That's something that the UFC world has really never seen. And like I said, I think that he's different than all those other guys that get the push. I do think he's going to win this fight. But like I've been saying, Meerscheart is the big step up in advantage or in competition. He has 23 submissions. It's either tied for first or second for most submission wins in the division. But yeah, 23 of his 31 wins by submission. He does have some decent wins, but nothing special, which is something that I don't really like, considering a guy that has this much experience in the ring with 44 professional fights. He's never really fought a true title, hasn't really beat like a true title contender. He's also coming off of a pretty bad run here. He's lost 4 of his last 6 fights. Most recently lost to Ian Heinisch. Also lost to Eric Anders, Eric your boy Anders, former Alabama football player, best nickname in the UFC. But besides the point, also lost to Kevin Holland, who we talked about, who is kicking off the card, and Jack Hermanson as well. So some of those guys aren't too bad to lose to, but you would like to see him win a couple of those. But the biggest concern here for Meerscheart, in my opinion, is his takedown defense. It isn't very good. It's actually below 50%, but that doesn't really say that he's comfortable being on his back. He can find you and put you in triangle, guillotine. It is. He can work for submissions off his back, but against a guy like this, I really just wants to be. I might say it that I think Chimaev might be the best grappler in the UFC already outside of Khabib Nurmagomedov. That's my bold take for the day. But one thing that Meerschaart's been saying in all of his interviews, which is very true, Chimaev hasn't seen any resistance. He's just been completely dominant, hasn't seen anyone fight back. I don't think it's going to be as easy as his other ones. Trust me, I don't think he's going to only take 2 punches while giving out 124 or whatever it is. But I still think he dominates this fight and finds a way to victory. One thing is, it's tough to pick way of finishing his fights because he can submit you. He does have good striking. He has great ground and pound. He can also ride you out to a decision. So you might not see any value on this pick, but Chimaev at minus 400 is probably a fair line. But I wouldn't blame you at all if this is just a fight that you want to watch and just have a neutral take on it to see if this guy really is the truth or not. But either way, I think he wins this fight. And I know I've rambled on a little bit about him here, but we can go straight into the co-main, which is, by the way, Niko Price versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Obviously, Cerrone is a fan favorite. I'm a fan of him myself. I really am. But got to be honest, he's just not really the fighter that he used to be. A couple years ago, he's fallen off a little bit recently. He's lost 4 fights in a row, but to give him credit, it is to some of the top competition in the world. Tony Ferguson, Gaethje, McGregor, and Showtime Pettis. So some good losses there, I guess you could say, even though he didn't really look that good in any of them. But his wins since late 2018 is only Mike Perry, Alexander Hernandez, and Ali Akinta. So not really great competition there either. Trust me, I would love to pick Cowboy in this fight. I'm a Cowboy fan, but I'm going with Niko Price, even though he is coming off that loss to Vicente Luque, and he really hasn't looked that good either. He did have that really good knockout with the crazy up kick versus James Vick, but he also really has been going up against the top competition himself. But yeah, I mean, I would say Cowboy's arguably at his best when he's on the ground, but recent track record shows he's not really, I wouldn't say willing. He is willing to go to the ground, but he doesn't really actively attempt to take the fight there, which I think is a big reason for concern. I wouldn't be surprised if Cowboy does win this fight. I think he probably retires. I don't think he should really hang around for too much longer. I would probably actually argue that he should have been gone, should have called it a career by now, but regardless, I do just think that Niko Price takes advantage here because I think Niko Price has the advantage on the feet. And like I said, Cerrone hasn't been trying to take fights down to the mat. So Niko Price at minus 150, I think is a fair line. And yeah, that's my pick for this one. I wish I could go elsewhere, but watching all these Cowboy fights recently, I just don't see it anymore. I think Niko Price takes this one. Maybe by decision, maybe by finish. I'm not really too sure. So I just think minus 150 is a pretty good line there with some decent value. And so then we can get into the main event. Obviously a very exciting one, a rivalry match here. Colby Chaos Covington versus Tyron Woodley. People that don't know, Tyron Woodley is a former champ, defended the belt at this weight class, I believe 4 times, might have been 3, but I think it was 4. I will say most of these guys' fights are super boring, and I mean super boring. I know there's a lot of people that call Tyron Woodley Tyquill Woodley because he puts you to sleep watching his fights, but I mean, I'm a fan of good grappling. I think it's entertaining to watch as long as they're not just laying on top of each other. If they're working, it makes for a decent fight in my eyes. But the criticism is that these guys just wrestle, don't work for a finish, and kind of just point fighting to a decision. And don't get me wrong, definitely a fair criticism. But regardless, before I even get into this, I should just say it is a rivalry match. Anyone that knows Colby Covington, he kind of has a lot of antics. He likes to be the bad guy. He does everything he can to get under your skin. Is perceived as a racist amongst a lot of people, including Woodley. Woodley's called him a racist, and also, let's just say Woodley hates him right now. He's talked about in many interviews how much he hates him. But politics aside, we'll just get straight into the fight. I just thought you guys should know that it is a rivalry matchup. Yeah, we'll get straight into it. Tyron Woodley's last 2 fights, no other way to say it. He looked terrible, absolutely awful. Got dominated by Kamaru Usman, which, don't get me wrong, I think Usman dominates everybody. But I still would have liked to see a little bit better of a fight, a little bit more pushback. And then also came back in his next fight against Gilbert Burns, and pretty much an exact replica of the first fight. Just got tossed around the ring, wrestled for pretty much the entire 25 minutes, and lost that fight as well. And on the other side, Colby is coming off a loss to Usman as well. Obviously, that was another big rivalry. And some people think it was a close fight. I think Usman was dominating the fight and then eventually got that finish in the 5th round. But like I said, a loss to Usman isn't really that concerning in my eyes. But when you look at Colby's record and resume, I'm really not impressed by it. I know he kind of shot up the rankings, but if you look at it in depth, he really just beat some old, past their prime fighters. He beat an old Robbie Lawler, an old RDA, Rafael dos Anjos, and an old Damian Maia, which, don't get me wrong, those are good names to have on a resume, but he hasn't beaten anyone in their prime that's at least notable in my eyes. But on the other side, you look at Woodley. Like I said, he was the champ for a while. He beat Darren Till, a younger Damian Maia. He beat Wonderboy, fought him twice, drew with him once, and it was a close fight in the second one too, but did get the win. He also fought a younger Robbie Lawler. He got the belt from Robbie Lawler before he started defending it. But even before that, he beat Kelvin Gastelum, Carlos Condit. I mean, he just has a more impressive resume. And the thing with him is he went from being viewed as a top 5 pound-for-pound guy to being viewed as a bum so fast because of his last 2 fights. But he knows the problem. He said that he listens to the fans. He knows he has not been letting his hands go these last 2 fights. And he promises that he will be throwing more punches and working more. So I think that's a great sign for Woodley. There's a lot of fighters that just think, no, I know what I'm doing. I don't need to change. It's just I need to be better. But I think it's great to see Woodley acknowledge what he's been doing wrong and promise that he's going to fix it. So I love to see that. And Colby on the other side kind of just wins his fights based on his incredible cardio. A lot of people think he has the best gas tank in the UFC. He can just wrestle and work and work and work. But yeah, I mean, that's his fight style. He's going to try to get it to the ground. Doesn't have the best stand-up, can throw a little bit, but relatively middle of the pack, nothing elite. He's going to try. Both these guys are probably going to try to take the fight to the ground. I think Woodley will be a little bit more willing to stand and throw, considering what I've heard him say. But, I mean, let's just say Woodley's a very good wrestler. I think he can survive on the ground against Colby. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I just think that Woodley at plus 275, I think he's going to win this fight. I really do. I think he's looked at the tape, seen how bad he looks, and he doesn't like it. He's used to being the best guy in the division. I think it's really pissing him off that he's lost 2 fights in such bad fashion. And I think a win over Colby, who America's champ, as a lot of people call him, I think he gets this win, kind of revives the career a little bit, because let's be honest, if he loses this fight 3 in a row, especially if he loses in bad fashion, it might be time for him to call it a career himself. So I think a pissed off Woodley at plus 275 carries some good value. So that is my pick for the fight. I'm going with a couple of underdogs here, and I said I'd give you guys one prelim fight real quick. It's David Dvorak, who is minus 110, minus 105, minus 115. It's basically a pick'em fight versus Jordan Espinosa, who Espinosa's coming off Dana White's Contender Series. Actually, just a couple weeks ago. It was the first week of the most recent Contender Series. He won the fight. The judges gave him the fight. He lost the fight. Let's be real. Even Dana said that I don't agree with the decision. But somehow he wasn't given a contract on that night, but he's here fighting on the prelims. I just wasn't impressed by him, and I think Dvorak is a very good fighter. So I think Dvorak at minus 110, minus 115, whatever it is a good pick there. So that's my one prelim pick. I'll just run it back real quick, just the picks for all the fights. To start off the main card, Holland and Darren Stewart fight to not go to decision at plus 115. I like that one to be finished. Mackenzie Dern minus 165 versus Randa Markos. Ryan Spann at plus 105 as a slight underdog versus Johnny Walker. Chimaev, I mean, minus 400. I know it's a boring pick there. But like I said earlier, I think this is a fight that you just kind of watch and enjoy. Then in the Niko price, I got him minus 150 versus Cowboy Cerrone. And then in that main event, I'm going with the underdog, Tyron Woodley, at plus 275 versus Colby Covington. So yeah, like I said, it's a good card. Not really any terrible fights on the main card. There's even some good fights on the prelims that I didn't even talk about here. I think it's a great card to have 1 week before the Adesanya card next weekend. But yeah, I mean, those are my picks. One thing in the UFC you can always do is you can parlay some big favorites to get a pretty decent price. I definitely think there are some opportunities to do that on this card. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. I will be back next week to preview the Adesanya card. I'm very excited for that one. But if you don't want to wait till next Friday, Monday through Thursday, I do an underdog show for MLB and NBA. It's at 11 a.m. every day. Every day, Monday through Thursday. You can tune in there. We're coming off a pretty good week right now. If you had just blindly tailed me, we're up 7.5 units with 2 pending plays in the NFL this weekend. So we had a great week. So yeah, if you're looking for something to do during the week, stop in at 11 a.m. You can find me here, and I'll be talking about some underdog plays. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys next week, whether it's Monday or Friday, whatever. But thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys